Tashi Dele. Hello everyone. My name is Tsem Rinpoche, and I am a Buddhist monk from Ganden Shatse Monastery, but Ganden Shatse has split, so we are previously from Ganden Shatse Monastery. Now today I wanted to talk about some things because the Tibetan leadership are always mentioning about Dorje Shugden. And a lot of things they mention changes over time. Because I think when people examine it carefully and they look at it carefully and they look at it with logic and they debate it out, they kind of find that the reasoning behind the prejudice and the negative stigma and talk against Dorje Shugden is not logical. If you've seen any of my other tapes, I've already mentioned that I am 52 and I received this practice over 30 years ago from my root teacher. And that was back in the 80s. My root teacher was His Holiness Tsem Rinpoche, who of course have passed away. And he gave me this practice because I requested a practice to remove obstacles for my life. And he personally gave me this practice and he personally granted it to me. In Tibetan Buddhism, what your Lama gives you, what your Lama grants you, what your Lama assigns you, what your Guru or your teacher or your Lama, same thing, assigns you, is what you keep for the rest of your life. No other Lama can override the instructions of your root teacher. So if your root teacher tells you to pray to green Tara for the rest of your life, and keep that as your main practice, and keep that as your main meditation, and keep that as your main yidam, and keep that as your main tutelary deity, then by instruction of your root Lama, you can meet 100 other Lamas who recommend you to do instead perhaps Zambala. So if you meet another Lama that tells you to do Zambala, another one tells you to do Zambala, another one tells you to do Zambala, you can do Zambala and incorporate it into your practice, but your main practice or your root practice or your focus should still be green Tara. If another teacher tells you, well, Zambala will be more effective for you and you should do Zambala instead of green Tara, or you should stop green Tara altogether, or you should spend more time on Zambala instead of green Tara, then you can politely tell the other teacher or the other masters, thank you for your advice, it's very kind of you, but I will continue my green Tara practice. The reason is because it was assigned to you by your teacher, the person you chose, the person you have agreed with, the person you have in your heart said, this is my root teacher for life. We can have 20 teachers, 15 teachers, 30 teachers, 16 teachers. We can have many teachers. But the root teacher is the one that touches us the most, the one that influences us the most, the one that inspires us the most. So that is the one that we listen to primarily. If we have other teachers, we can add on to what our root teacher says to do. For example, if our root teacher tells us to do 100,000 prostrations, and another teacher tells us, well, we should do water offerings, we can do our prostrations and we can do our water offerings. But at no time do we substitute our root teacher's instructions. At no time do we eliminate or delete our root teacher's instructions for another teacher. Even if another teacher is very famous, even if another teacher is very great and very well known and very renowned and very erudite, it doesn't matter, because we shouldn't switch teachers on the basis of fame or name or how many people they have. We should stick to our root teacher because we have checked out our root teacher, we have agreed for this person to be our root teacher, we have agreed to follow our root teacher. So in the Tibetan Tantric tradition, it's very, very important that once we have committed to our teacher, we follow our root teacher and his instructions or her instructions all the way till the end of our lives. And no other teacher can override that. So, I myself have 16 teachers. And I have received teachings on various sutras and tantras, and and transmissions and many commentaries from these 16 teachers. But my primary and root teacher that I chose was His Holiness Kyabje Sarnamji. So what I practice, what I meditate on, what I do daily in my recitations and in my meditations and in my contemplations is what Sarnamji gave me primarily. I have some practices and meditations given to me by some other teachers, but I do mainly what Sarnamji gave me. And if I was to ever change what Sarnamji gave me, or to delete, or to amend, or to adjust, I would need Sarnamji's permission. Well, some people might ask, well, what happens if Kyabje Sarnamji has passed away and he's not around, or you're not able to get a hold of him? Well then, whatever we promised him last, we have to keep that promise. That means if we promised him to do certain practices, since we cannot get his permission to stop the practices, we must continue the practices. This is called samaya, or guru devotion, or integrity. Having integrity toward our gurus. We shouldn't give up our practices because we're lazy. We shouldn't give up our practices because we find excuses not to do it. We shouldn't give it up because we don't see any results, because the results come over time. Everyone's different. We shouldn't give up the practices because another guru told us to. We shouldn't give up our practices because someone famous told us to. We shouldn't give up the practices if someone tells us our practices are not effective or not good. Because why? We have already taken refuge and faith with our teachers, our root teacher. Whatever our root teacher has given us, that is what we must stick to. And if we are not to stick to it, we have to seek the permission of our root teacher to be excused from it. If our root teacher is passed away or not around or not contactable, then we have to keep doing our practice. If we delete or adjust the practice of our root teacher and override it with someone other teacher's advice, then what happens? It says in the 50 verses of Guru Devotion by Ashvaghosha, then one will not gain results from one's meditations. For example, Milarepa had studied with the great Marpa, and Marpa didn't give him much Dharma in the beginning. Milarepa has done many actions that were very negative, that would become an obstacle to his meditational practice. So Milarepa, being someone with a lot of negative karma, Marpa, in his compassion, decided to purify the karma of Milarepa before giving him teachings and even higher teachings. So for years, Milarepa was cooking for Marpa and the wife Damema and the child. He was doing farming for his guru. He was cutting wood. He was planting, harvesting, cultivating. He did a lot of work with his guru. And every time his guru, Marpa, would give teachings, Milarepa would try to go into the teachings, but he would be escorted out. Sometimes Marpa would wrathfully tell him to get out, don't come for the teachings. So after a few years of working so hard for the guru, serving the guru, and being around the guru, all Milarepa ever received was scoldings, and he wasn't allowed to go to any of the teachings. Milarepa became very disheartened, and his guru's wife, Damema, felt a lot of pity and compassion for Milarepa. So what she did was she wrote a letter, and she, in Marpa's name, and she took a gift, I think it was like a turquoise, a big piece of turquoise in Marpa's name, and gave that to Milarepa and sent him to one of Marpa's leading students to receive teachings. So Milarepa, with the letter and with the gift, was sent off, and he left Marpa's house to receive teachings from one of Marpa's main students. When he arrived at Marpa's main student's house, when this person read the letter and saw the gift, he immediately obeyed, because he thought Marpa had ordered him to teach and give teachings to Milarepa. Instead, Milarepa never said Marpa gave permission for him to teach his student. Marpa never said that anyone can teach Milarepa. He never gave permission to his student to teach Milarepa. And Milarepa kept quiet. He didn't say anything. So what happened was Marpa's student gave very powerful teachings to Milarepa and gave him esoteric teachings and initiated him to Tantra and put him inside a cave very nearby to meditate. And the practice that this person gave Milarepa was very potent. And most people who do the meditations would receive signs within a few months. So he would give teachings and instructions to Milarepa. Milarepa would go and meditate. Then a few days later, a week or two later, he'd call Milarepa back and ask, did you have any signs? Did you have any dreams? Did you experience this? And Milarepa would say no. And then the same thing would happen again. He'd call him back and he'd ask, did you receive any dreams or any signs or any sort of auspicious omens? And Milarepa again would say no. So it confused the teacher, and he was like, that's impossible. That is impossible that I give you these teachings and there are no signs. So he decided to question Milarepa stronger. And how he questioned Milarepa was, he said, did Marpa actually send you here? Did Marpa actually ask you to come here to receive teachings? And that's when Milarepa confessed and said, no, he did not. His wife sent me. So the student of Marpa was very, very upset and very, very ashamed. He immediately packed up Milarepa's things, took Milarepa back to Marpa's house and prostrated to Marpa and said, I'm so sorry. Great Marpa, I have been teaching your student without your permission. And then he realized that by teaching Marpa's student without the permission of the Guru, Milarepa was not receiving any signs. And that story represents that when we don't have our Guru's permission, when we don't have our teacher's permission, then it's very hard to get signs in tantric practice. Similarly, if our teacher gives us a practice, if we practice it and we believe and we trust, we will get very powerful siddhis. Now, what I want to speak about today was His Holiness Kyabje Pabongka Dorje Chang, His Holiness Kyabje Trijang Dorje Chang, His Holiness Kyabje Song Dorje Chang, and many, many other well-known lamas from Ganden Sera Drepung and Tashi Lungpo and Amdo Tashi Kiel has taught the lineage and practice and given the initiation of Dorje Shugden to tens of thousands of students for the last 400 years. Okay, prior to Pabongka Rinpoche, tens of thousands of students have received the practice and the lineage and the meditation of Dorje Shugden within the Sakya lineage and within the Gelugpa lineage. And then from Pabongka and Trijang Rinpoche and Saramji's time, again, thousands and thousands and thousands of students have received Dorje Shugden's practice. To do Dorje Shugden's practice, you request your teacher, and the teacher will give you a life entrustment, which is sokte. Sokte is literally translated as life entrustment ceremony. And that's when the Guru tells Dorje Shugden to watch this disciple until he gains bodhicitta. And then the disciple will make a vow to Dorje Shugden and say, I will hold you as my principal protector until I achieve bodhicitta. So the student is bound to the protector by the power of the Lama. The Lama or the Guru introduces Dorje Shugden to the student, and the student agrees, and then the Lama will ask Dorje Shugden to take this disciple to watch over and to care for until he achieves or she achieves bodhicitta. So the agreement is made. When the agreement is made, it's solidified by the ceremony and offerings that is embodied in a sokte. So what happens is once you receive that sokte from your Lama, you practice Dorje Shugden for the rest of your life. And most of us have received sokte, although it's a secret practice, just like most of Tantra is, and we cannot give that practice up. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whom I respect very much, and the Tibetan leadership has asked us to give up Dorje Shugden. And they have stated many reasons of why we should give up Dorje Shugden. And I know many great tukuls and geshis and masters and yogis and mahasiddhas that I have met personally have told me Dorje Shugden is no other than a Buddha and is also no other than Manjushri himself. So I have met many, many, many great masters in Ganden Sera Drepung. Some are passed away, some are still alive. we're talking about erudite masters who are top in debate class, top in scriptural class, top in study of Tantra, graduated from Tantra colleges such as Gyude and Gyume monasteries. Gyude and Gyume monasteries are where the monks from Ganden Sera Drepung will go to study the Tantra. So I have met monks and lamas and yogis and geshis and high lamas who have graduated from Gyude and Gyume, who are excellent in drawing of mandalas, who are excellent in rituals, who are masters of San, De, Jik-sung, Yamataka, Guya Samaja, Hiruka. They are masters of both De and Nga, De Nga, which is Sutra and Tantra. And they're excellent in debate, and they're abbots. They themselves are abbots, and they have ordained hundreds of monks. They themselves have told me many, many times Dorje Shugden is a Buddha. So therefore, when the Tibetan leadership says that Dorje Shugden is not a Buddha and that he's harmful, it makes me think, how is that possible? How is it after 400 years of thousands and thousands of Sakya disciples, monks and nuns and lay people, tens and thousands of Gelugpa lay people and monks and nuns and high lamas have been practicing Dorje Shugden, that these 400 years no one saw that he is negative, that he's a horrible spirit, he's a harmful spirit, that none of these lamas for the last 400 years, and we're talking about hundreds of erudite masters, didn't get signs and dreams and indications he's negative. In fact, instead of saying he's negative, they are saying he's enlightened and he's Manjushri. So, now, I think there's a very good solution for all of this. I think there's a very, very good solution for all of this. And what I want to talk about is how the Tibetan leadership tells us that Dorje Shugden harms the Dalai Lama. Dorje Shugden harms Nyingma people. Dorje Shugden harms people who don't stay within the Gelugpa school. And so what I wanted to do was to offer some simple examples of how all of this is absolutely not true. Number one, for Tibetans, for people who've studied in the monasteries, the steps and stages for a person to purify their mind and to realize emptiness and to gain full omniscience is not an easy task. And once you've gained omniscience or you've become a Buddha, when you become a fully enlightened Buddha, a Chomdende, one who has jumped over samsara, who has left samsara, it can never reverse back. So what does that mean? Simply, once you become a Buddha, you can never become un-Buddha'd. You cannot be not a Buddha anymore. So once you become a Buddha, you are a Buddha. Once you become a Buddha, your body, your speech, your mind becomes one. So you can emanate in thousands of forms. You can emanate in hundreds and hundreds and thousands of locations in samsara. Remember, planet Earth is just one speck in samsara. There are thousands and billions and trillions and millions of universes, solar systems, existences on different planes. There's the form realm, formless realm, desire realm. Within the form, formless, and desire, which is kasa Dorje kam, dan sukam, formless realm, form realm, desire realm. Within those places, there are billions and billions of existences. So samsara isn't just planet Earth. There are Buddhas teaching in many, many places, many, many dimensions, many, many places that are different, that's not even remotely similar to us. Because a Kangsa or a living being is not dependent on just having one face and two arms and looking like a human. There are humanoids all over. So therefore, the Buddhas can appear all over the universe, all over in time. They can appear as animals. They can appear as animate objects, inanimate objects. There is no limitations in how these beings can appear. Therefore, in Tibet, in an Indian tradition, in the Indian Mahasiddha tradition, in the Tibetan tradition, we know, we believe, and it's stated that once a person becomes enlightened, they are enlightened on the basis of their bodhicitta and their realization of shunyata, or emptiness. It can never ever reverse. And due to their powerful realization or the achievement of bodhicitta, they will continuously emanate to benefit beings. They'll emanate as good people, as bad people, as women, as men, as robbers, as prostitutes, as presidents, as kings. They'll emanate as monks, as high lamas, as beggars. They'll emanate as mahasiddhas, as yogis. They'll emanate as crooks. They'll emanate as robbers. They'll emanate in many forms because each one of those emanations play a different type of function. They benefit a certain group of beings. Similarly, in Tibet, we believe that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a highly realized being, and he is in fact Avalokiteshvara, Chanesic. Now, some people may believe he is Chanesic, Avalokiteshvara. Some people may not believe that. But let me go on the route that people believe that he is Avalokiteshvara, which means he is a 10-stage bodhisattva, one who cannot return back to samsara, one who has achieved Buddhahood. Some people say, well, Chanesic is someone that deferred his enlightenment in order to benefit sentient beings. That is according to Sutra view. On Tantra view, Avalokiteshvara is fully enlightened, manifesting as a bodhisattva. So therefore, if we take the Tantric view, Avalokiteshvara is a fully enlightened Buddha, manifesting as a 10th-stage bodhisattva, manifesting as one of the 8 main disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha in order to question Shakyamuni so that Shakyamuni will be prompted to turn the wheel of Dharma. Because without requesting teachings, you cannot give teachings. So Avalokiteshvara is actually a fully enlightened Buddha. In fact, if you listen to some of the Dalai Lama's precious teachings, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has mentioned a few times in his teachings, which I heard, that sometimes he has deja vus and premonitions that he was sitting in the audience 2,500 years ago listening to Shakyamuni as he taught. So he has these kind of premonitions and type of feelings and kind of remembrance of previous lives. Kind of remembrance of previous lives that he was a direct disciple of Shakyamuni and he was sitting there in the audience on the outskirts. He mentioned that himself. I've heard that myself. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. Many people in the Tibetan society, many people believe His Holiness to be Avalokiteshvara, and he has shown many signs to be a sublime being, to be a highly realized being, to be a highly powerful being. So therefore, since the Dalai Lama is Avalokiteshvara, he is an enlightened being. If he is an enlightened being, he is free from all karma. He is free from all result of karma and the creation of karma. He creates no karma. Since he creates no karma, he is not able to experience negative karma. Negative conditions that the Dalai Lama comes across is not the conditions that he experiences or creates on his own, or that is the result of his own karma. It is the result of the people around him that he needs to go through with these people and experience karmas in order to benefit them. So he's not, if he's in a hot place, it's not his karma that makes him suffer the heat. It is the karma of the people in that area. So therefore, when he goes to that area, he has the heat and he experiences the heat, but it's not a result of his negative karma. That's what Tibetans believe. Now, if that's the case, since His Holiness the Dalai Lama is Avalokiteshvara, Chanesic, he is omniscient, he is all-knowing, he has full clairvoyance, he has full tantric powers and Mahasiddha powers, and he's basically a Buddha. He's a Buddha emanating in the form of a man, in the form of a human being, in the form of a great monk. Although he's emanating as a great monk, he still is a Buddha. Therefore, how can a Buddha be harmed by an evil spirit? How can Dorje Shugden harm the Dalai Lama? If Dorje Shugden can harm the Dalai Lama, then the Dalai Lama cannot be a Buddha. So if we say he is a Buddha, then it creates a lot of other questions. Then similarly, how can Dorje Shugden harm any high Lama who's achieved high realizations? It's impossible. So therefore, even if I practice Dorje Shugden, and I attend the Dalai Lama's talks, and I attend the Dalai Lama's ceremonies, and I attend the Dalai Lama's religious rites, there is no way I can harm him. And the reason why there's no way I can harm him is because the Dalai Lama has no karma to be harmed. Therefore, when people say Dorje Shugden will shorten Dalai Lama's life, Dorje Shugden will harm the Dalai Lama, the Dorje Shugden will obstruct the Dalai Lama's wishes, that's impossible. Why is that impossible? How can any so-called negative being harm an enlightened Buddha? If the Dalai Lama can be harmed, then there's no point for us to take refuge in the Buddha. There's no point in us meditating and aspiring to become a Buddha. Because if we become a Buddha and we can be harmed, then what's the point of becoming a Buddha? What's the point? So that doesn't make sense at all. The second way of looking at it is this. Let's say there's another school of thought, perhaps from the West, who doesn't really believe the Dalai Lama is an emanation of Avalokiteshvara, but we have to accept that he is a monk, and he has held his vows, and he is a pure monk, and he has been a monk for over 60, 70 years. It is said in the Vinaya Sutra, those of us who take on the robes and take on the vows of a monk, gods, devas, and spirits cannot harm us. Demons and magic cannot harm us. Why cannot not harm us? Because we are holding the vows given to us originally from Shakyamuni Buddha. So by having the vows of a Sangha, without doing any rituals, without doing any sort of special practices or meditations, we are actually protected from negative spirits, demons, ghosts, magic, and harm. Therefore, if an ordinary monk like myself is protected from negative spirits and negative demons and magic and curses, surely someone as enlightened and attained and as pure as Dalai Lama cannot be harmed. So if you look at it carefully, the Dalai Lama cannot be harmed because he is Avalokiteshvara, and Avalokiteshvara cannot be harmed. And whatever we do around Avalokiteshvara, nothing will happen. For example, at the last stage of Lord Buddha's enlightenment, in the 4th watch of the night, when the Maras came, and Mara came and he emanated as beautiful ladies to seduce the Buddha. He emanated as powerful warriors, shooting weapons, molten lava, and throwing boulders, and all kinds of fearful weapons. He tried to throw Buddha off. He wasn't able to. At that last stage, when Buddha reached the last point where he let go of his eye, when he became enlightened, Mara and his games and his threats and all his magical illusions could not harm the Buddha. So therefore, we can conclude that the Buddha has no karma to be harmed. That goes for any Buddha. It isn't just the historical Buddha, any Buddha. So therefore, the Dalai Lama being a Buddha cannot be harmed. Cannot be harmed by cannot be harmed by Dorje Shugden, cannot be harmed by anyone. So therefore, there is no need for restrictions of Dorje Shugden practitioners. Secondly, I'd like to mention, in Tibetan Buddhism, we have so many powerful rituals, powerful magical rituals to bind spirits, to control spirits, or to negate spirits, to even destroy spirits if they're very harmful and send their consciousness to a Buddha realm. For example, the state protector of Tibet that is highly used by the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan leadership, his name is Nechung. Nechung is actually not a Tibetan deity. According to John Avedon, in his book Exile from the Land of Snows, in a chapter called The Wheel of Protection, he wrote very clearly, and I checked what he wrote with other lamas and my gurus. He wrote very clearly there that it says that actually Nechung is a very evil negative, harmful spirit that originally came from Persia. And through the traders, he ended up in Tibet. And when Tibet was practicing shamanism and Tibet was practicing nature worship and all that stuff, the Tibetan kings started inviting Buddhist masters to Tibet. When they invited the Buddhist masters, such as the first one, Shantaraksita, then Nechung, along with his host of minion of spirits and demons, for lack of a better word, and the other mountain gods of Tibet who were very against Buddhism, started creating a lot of obstacles, hail and fire and earthquakes, to prevent these masters from teaching. So the first teacher, Shantaraksita, who was very renowned, erudite, and learned monk, didn't have any occult abilities. So whenever he tried to give a teaching, something would happen that would stop the teachings. For example, there would be hail, and then people couldn't come to the teachings. Or the tent where he was to teach would fall. Things like that. So what happened was the great master Shantaraksita told the Tibetans, I'm not able to do much here, but you must invite the occult tantric master, Guru Pedma Sambhava. If you invite him, he will be able to proliferate the Dharma in Tibet. So the kings of Tibet and the leaders of Tibet listened to him, and they went and invited the great master, Lepen Rinpoche or Guru Rinpoche, to Tibet. And when Guru Rinpoche came, sure enough, Nechung did his job again, and they went into psychic wars, they fought. There was many so-called psychic battles. In the end, Nechung lost. When Nechung lost, he appeared as a young boy to Guru Rinpoche, and he folded his hands and he said that I submit to you. So Guru Rinpoche took his vajra, placed it on the boy's head, and he took some of his inner offering, which is alcohol, and placed it on the boy's tongue and ordained him as a protector of the Dharma. And he made Nechung swear that in the future he will do no harm to the Tibetan nation, that he will bring no obstacles to the growth of Buddhism in Tibet. And in fact, in the future, a couple of hundred years later, after Guru Rinpoche has passed away, there will be an incarnation which is the holder of the lotus. And that's another epithet for Avalokiteshvara. A few hundred years later, an emanation of the holder of the lotus will come to Tibet, and you will assist him to proliferate the Dharma. And to that, Nechung has sworn. My point? Guru Rinpoche was able to do psychic battle, overcome this pernicious, evil, malicious, and very malevolent spirit that was very powerful, that he can chase away Shantaraksita. He was able to subdue him and bind him and make him swear to protect the Dharma and help the Dharma. But we have to realize that Guru Rinpoche, being an enlightened being, has the quality that all enlightened beings have. Surely the Dalai Lama and the high lamas of Tibetan Buddhism can get together and do a puja and a binding ritual to capture Dorje Shugden, capture his spirit, and make him swear to stop harming, maybe even make him into a Dharma protector. Now, I don't understand why His Holiness the Dalai Lama and many other high lamas don't get together and just have a little tantric get-together and call Dorje Shugden and bind him and make him swear, as was done to Nechung by Guru Rinpoche. Now, if we bind Dorje Shugden, since we are here to assume he's negative and he's so powerful and everybody's so afraid of him, right? Surely an enlightened being, a tantrically attained being such as Dalai Lama, can bind him. If the Dalai Lama cannot bind Dorje Shugden, then what does it say about Dorje Shugden? That Dorje Shugden is more powerful than the Dalai Lama? Or that the Dalai Lama doesn't have the power to bind him? How could that be? How can a Buddha, Dalai Lama is a Buddha, how can a Buddha not be able to bind an evil spirit? So if we bind Dorje Shugden, guess what will happen? Then the Tibetan government in exile, which is called the Central Tibetan Administration, or in short, CTA, the Central Tibetan Administration, or CTA in Dharamsala, they don't have to write negative things about Dorje Shugden on their websites. They don't have to advise people against Dorje Shugden on Tibet.net, and dalalama.com. They have sections where they actually advise you against practicing Dorje Shugden and warn you how negative Dorje Shugden is and frighten you to tell you how evil he is. It's kind of like in Christianity, the age-old battle between God and the devil, God and the devil. Well, my question is, God can just get rid of the devil and then nobody would sin again. So why leave the devil alive? Surely God is more powerful than the devil. So similarly in Buddhism, you have the Dalai Lama and Dorje Shugden. In Tibetan Buddhism, that is. Surely the Dalai Lama is more powerful than Dorje Shugden. I'm not saying this to be facetious or to be sarcastic or try to infer something. I really believe the Dalai Lama is very powerful and he's enlightened, and I've never ever thought otherwise. So among my students, I have never said even one negative word about or against His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and that's my policy because I respect him very much. So if the Dalai Lama would bind Dorje Shugden and do a puja to bind him, well, guess what? We don't have to spend money on writers, on website masters, on people who maintain the websites, the servers. To have a section on dalalama.com or tibet.net that specifically talks against Dorje Shugden, you can save yourself time. The second thing is, His Holiness the Dalai Lama during his Dharma talks, year after year, month after month, always slips in a word or two about how bad Dorje Shugden is and how we shouldn't practice him and we should be careful of him. Well, my very respectful request to His Holiness is that he doesn't need to warn us about Dorje Shugden if he would just bind Dorje Shugden and make him into a positive being, just like what Guru Rinpoche did to Nechung. Remember, Nechung in Tibetan history and in Tibetan Buddhist history is actually a negative evil spirit that was bound to help. You can do research. You can do research. In fact, Dalai Lama says Nechung's picture, the depiction of Nechung should not be put on the altar equal with the Dalai Lama, but on a lower space. Okay? Then on top of that, the Tibetan government do not have to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rupees on writers and contract people to write books and then print thousands of books and distribute them all over the world to all types of people to discourage people against Dorje Shugden. They can save money about that. If the Dalai Lama and other high lamas of Tibetan Buddhism keep talking about how harmful Dorje Shugden is, how we should stay away from Dorje Shugden, how if you practice Dorje Shugden, you should not go to their Dharma talks. With the deepest respect, it makes the Dalai Lama and other high lamas look pretty impotent. It makes them look pretty powerless. How can the Dalai Lama and all these spirits, the Dalai Lama and all these high lamas be afraid of a spirit? Why don't all these high lamas or the Dalai Lama or together bind the spirit, call him? Trust me, there are rituals to do that. There are rituals to do that. Bind him and keep him quiet once and for all. Now, if he's such an evil, malevolent spirit, there are rituals that you can sever his consciousness and send his consciousness to a pure land. There are rituals for that. For example, fire pujas. In the fire puja, for example, Yamataka fire puja, you can do. You can invite the spirit, you can invite the negative consciousness of the evil spirit to come onto your ladle, and with meditation, mantra, and mudra, and pure samadhi, that's concentration, you can dump the consciousness of the evil spirit into the wisdom fire, and from that the consciousness burns, and immediately it takes a new rebirth in a pure land of the Buddha. So when we do fire pujas of Yamantaka, you can definitely do things like that. You can send a spirit to another place. Another question is, we have Nechung, we have Pelden Lama, another famous protector. We have Mahakala, Gombocha Druba, 6-hour Mahakala. We have Gombocha Shipa, 4-hour Mahakala. We have Gomboche Shipa, 4-face Mahakala. We have Gongkar Y Mahakala. We have Chamsing. We have Namse, Veshavana. We have Chittipati Kinkara. We have Kalarupa, Chinangsum, Chögyel Chinangsum, inner, outer, secret Kalarupa. We have all these powerful protectors. Are you telling me Dorje Shugden is more powerful than all of them? If we pray to Pendant Lama or we pray to Mahakala, you mean they can't protect us from a negative evil spirit? How come they cannot protect the Tibetan nation? They cannot protect the Dalai Lama. They cannot protect the Tibetan people from one evil spirit. Does that make sense to you? So is Dorje Shugden more powerful than all these protectors? Well, you say, well, you know, no, he's not. He definitely can be subdued by these powerful protectors. Well, if he can be subdued by Kali Devi, Pendant Lama, Kalarupa, Damzin Chögyel, Gompa Chadru, 6-hour Mahakala, Namte Se, Veshavana, if he can be subdued by these protectors, why are these protectors not subduing him? Why are these protectors allowing him to create havoc and broken samaya within the Gelugpa school of Buddhism? Doesn't make sense. So either he's more powerful than these protectors, or these protectors know he's not an evil spirit and there's nothing to subdue. Surely they can protect, isn't it? So, and another thing is, in the late 90s and early 2000s, when I was in Ganden Monastery, the CTA spread news that if we practice Dorje Shugden, then it becomes conflict with Nechung. If it becomes in conflict with Nechung, then Nechung cannot help us get Tibet back. Because by practicing Dorje Shugden creates obstacles for people to get Tibet back. That also doesn't make sense. How can one single so-called, inverted commas, evil spirit block the Dalai Lama to get our country back? Block Lingrimchi, Trijangrimchi, and all the other high lamas of the other lineages. How can Dorje Shugden block all the Dharma protectors? Block the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, the Arhats, the Dakas, Dakinis, and the enlightened super-mundane protectors, and the 12 goddesses of Tibet, Tenpa Jungni. How can he block everyone and their power and their blessings to get Tibet back? You mean all the Dharma protectors, all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and deities, and Yidams, and tutelary deities, and high lamas, and the Dalai Lama, and the lineage lamas, all of them do not have enough power to overcome one evil spirit? That also doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. So therefore, Dorje Shugden cannot harm the Dalai Lama. Dorje Shugden cannot harm any monks or nuns. Dorje Shugden cannot harm any sentient being, especially if they have refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, or they practice Pendant Lama, Mahakala, or Kalarupa. Dorje Shugden cannot harm the wishes of Tibet. Tibet wishes independence, some wishes independence, some wishes autonomy. Some Tibetans wish autonomy, some Tibetans wish independence, Rangzin, Ume Lam. They have various wishes. But the point is that Dorje Shugden cannot block the wishes of Tibet. So if that's the case, what is Dorje Shugden actually harming? What is Dorje Shugden actually harming when you think about it? Everyone can go to the Dalai Lama's teachings. If you practice Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, Shintoism, Jainism, Druid, witchcraft, voodoo. I mean, there are people who actually practice Satanism, that practice the devil. I mean, they actually pray to the devil and they make animal sacrifices, they make blood sacrifices. And in Western countries, it is enshrined in democracy that you can practice any religion you want, as long as it follows the law. So there are people in Western countries who practice Satanism. And There are good Satan. There are Satanism that actually, create harm. There are Satanism that actually doesn't create harm. There are different types of Satanism. Same thing with voodoo. There's white voodoo and there's black voodoo. So all these people and atheists can attend the Dalai Lama's rituals, Kala Chakra teachings. And when they're attending these teachings, many of them are not going there to attend. They're just looking and they're watching and they're kind of listening to what he's saying. They're allowed to attend, but Dorje Shugden people are not allowed to attend. And that's really strange, because Dorje Shugden people believe in the Buddha, believe in the lineage lamas, believe in the Dharma, believe in the Sangha. They hold their vows. They practice the same meditational deities. They belong to Ganden Sera Drepung. So what does not make sense is, how come only Dorje Shugden people cannot attend the Dalai Lama's teachings? Then some people might argue, well, since your faith is different than the Dalai Lama, you cannot go. But there are many people in the Dalai Lama's audience who are not Buddhists, who do not subscribe to the Buddhist teachings, who do not believe or trust the Buddhist teachings, but they like to go and listen to the Dalai Lama. They're allowed to go. We, Dorje Shugden people, believe in the Buddha, believe in the Dharma, believe in the Sangha, but we're not allowed to go because we practice Dorje Shugden. How about people who practice New Age religions? They practice a mishmash of different religions. Not that it's wrong, that's their choice. Some people practice Krishna and Jesus and Buddha, and they put it all together, and they practice a little bit of voodoo. They do druid practices, they do nature practices, they worship the goddess Ishtar, they worship Isis, they worship Satan. They do all of that, do a little mishmash. And they go to the Dalai Lama's teachings, and their religious views are completely opposite. So if their religious views are completely opposite, wouldn't that contradict the Samaya with the Dalai Lama? The Samaya is a religious relationship with the Dalai Lama? Doesn't make sense. Okay, now, the Dalai Lama is not only the spiritual leader of Tibetans, he's also the secular and the king of Tibet. Maybe recently he's passed that relationship onto somebody else, but behind the scenes, he's still the biggest leader in Tibet. He'll always be forever. So what's my point? My point is, as a secular leader of Tibet who speaks for Tibetan people, their welfare, their language, their culture, their music, their cuisine, their health, their education, he's a secular leader. As a secular leader, why is it when he gives public talks, Dorje Shugden people are also not allowed to attend? That doesn't make sense. How come in the Tibetan government, Dorje Shugden people are not represented? They're not allowed in the monasteries. They're not allowed in the Tibetan hospitals. They're not allowed in the Tibetan institutions and schools. It's clear in the Tibetan government's charter that if you practice Dorje Shugden, you cannot work for the Tibetan government. So how come Dorje Shugden people are not represented in the Tibetan parliament? I mean, whether we practice Dorje Shugden, we don't practice Dorje Shugden, we should be represented, because we are Tibetan people. People are people no matter what religion we are. So that doesn't make sense. You have many paranormal shows these days. Many paranormal shows that have psychics, that can see spirits, they do healing, they do exorcisms, they do clearing, they send a spirit into the light. There are many psychics these days that kind of go to a house and say, oh wow, there's this ghost here, there's this demon here, there's this spirit, and I'm going to send them into the light and clear them. You have hundreds of psychics and hundreds of paranormal shows these days. You just go on YouTube. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of paranormal shows where you see these psychics sending evil spirits into the light. Why doesn't one single Tibetan Lama send Dorje Shugden into the light? And then we never have to talk about him again. And then we can all unite, we can sit together, we can be friends, we can be one. Wouldn't that be very good? For example, if one great Tibetan Lama would send Dorje Shugden into the light, and he has gone, he doesn't exist anymore. Even if we have pictures of him, tankas of him, we have statues of him, we have tsatsas of him, we have drawings of him, we're praying to a dead spirit, a dead god. So nobody should be afraid of a dead god, right? Nobody should be afraid of a dead spirit. So why doesn't one Tibetan Lama do that? And if the Tibetan Lamas cannot send Dorje Shugden into the light, why don't they Google and find a psychic in Europe or America or in Asia and hire the psychic to send Dorje Shugden into the light? Then guess what? We don't need to be afraid of him anymore. We don't have to have websites against him. We don't need to write books against him. His Holiness the Dalai Lama don't need to speak against him. We don't have to separate the monasteries. We don't have to separate Dorje Shugden and alienate them and segregate them anymore. Then these people don't become Dorje Shugden people anymore. They become just people. Wouldn't that be nice? So I guess in conclusion, what I want to say is, the Tibetan CTA, Central Tibetan Administration, would save themselves a lot of money and a lot of headaches if they send Dorje Shugden into the light. What do you think? I think we can do that. There are many rituals. There are many rituals in Tibetan Buddhism. I know of some that can bind and exorcise a negative spirit and send them away, or bind them to stop doing negative harm, or to bind them to turn them into positive beings. Or some rituals even destroy their consciousness and send their consciousness to a higher plane to take rebirth. That can be done, right? Why doesn't one Tibetan Lama do that instead of talking about how evil the spirit is, making chakras and making all kinds of amulets against them? That's ridiculous. That's one. Two, the Dalai Lama is the Buddha. And when we take Dalai Lama as our guru, he protects us. We're in his divine mandala. Dorje Shugden cannot harm the Dalai Lama. Dorje Shugden will not harm the Dalai Lama. Dorje Shugden is unable to harm the Dalai Lama. Dorje Shugden cannot harm the Dalai Lama because the Dalai Lama is the Buddha. That's one. That's two. Number three, all of us who take refuge in the Buddha, who surrender ourselves and trust the powerful compassion of the Buddha, in the realization of bodhicitta and shunyata of the Buddha, and we practice the Dharma, and we totally have respect for the Sangha. In fact, in fact, what I want to say is actually take refuge in the three jewels. Then we have no way any negative spirits can harm us. So what is everybody talking about? What is everybody worrying about? Oh, that's a Dorje Shugden person. I can't go eat with them. That's a Dorje Shugden person. I can't marry them. That's a Dorje Shugden person. I can't be seen with them. That's a Dorje Shugden person. They can't come to the Dharma talk. A final note. Since Dorje Shugden is advertised and marketed by some Tibetan Lamas as very negative and very evil, the people who practice Dorje Shugden are the greater sinners on the face of Tibetan Buddhism, isn't it? So since the people who practice Dorje Shugden are the greatest sinners, and the ones with the most sin because they're praying to a devil, they're praying to an evil spirit, they're sinners, shouldn't the good Buddhists have more compassion for the sinners? Shouldn't they invite the sinners to their teachings and talks and slowly teach them and turn their mind against Dorje Shugden instead of expelling them and segregating them and biasing against them? Isn't that simple? Didn't Jesus Christ teach that? To love thy enemies, to be meek, to take care of the meek, to take care of the humble, to love thy enemies, if one hits you on one cheek, to give your other cheek for them. Even Jesus Christ taught that. The Buddha said the same thing. The Buddha said the same thing. If we read the 8 verses of thought transformation, what does it talk about? To forgive those that harm us, to let go of those that harm us. The great master Dipankara Sri Jana Atisha specifically invited one old monk from India with him that used to scold Atisha, criticize Atisha, and everything Atisha did, this monk would just scold him and criticize him. Atisha brought this monk with him to Tibet in order for Atisha to be able to take care of the monk and also for Atisha himself to develop great patience. So instead of chasing this monk away that always create problems with Atisha kept this person near him in order to generate more compassion, more bodhicitta, and to reach a state that even people who harm him, he has no hatred and no anger. For great practitioners of Buddhism, for great practitioners of Lojong, the mind teaching, the mind transformation teachings, the great practitioners of bodhicitta, they actually keep many harmful people around them. They keep harmful people around them, people that harm, that make trouble, that make difficulties, and always try to help them, always try to assist them, always try to give them another chance, because it is a practice of unending compassion, that their compassion doesn't end. When a person says good things to you or does good things to you, you like them. When a person does bad things to you, you don't like them. The whole spirit of Buddhism is to reach equilibrium, not to hate or love, but to treat everybody equally. So, as Buddhist practitioners, shouldn't the Tibetan Lamas invite, reach out, and specifically send invitations to Dorje Shugden people and say, come to the teachings, come to the rituals, come to the gatherings, because you need more blessings than anybody else because you're the biggest sinners. Shouldn't they love the sinners more, have more compassion for the sinners? Shouldn't they? Instead of segregating them and chasing them away. Now that's assuming Dorje Shugden is an evil spirit. But the argument here and the debate here is not that Dorje Shugden is the evil spirit. Of course he's not. All the same, people who practice Dorje Shugden should not be segregated or separated. Today's talk was about how it is impossible for Dorje Shugden to be harmed, to harm someone, especially someone like the Dalai Lama. It's impossible. It is impossible for Dorje Shugden to harm anyone who has refuge. It is impossible for Dorje Shugden to destroy the purpose of Tibet. It is impossible for Dorje Shugden to not help Tibet get its country back. It is impossible for Dorje Shugden to not help, to harm people in any way, shape, or form. And also, why doesn't the High Lamas bind him? Why doesn't the High Lamas do something and change him? If the High Lamas do that and change him and bind him and make him swear to not harm anymore, then all our problems are gone. If the High Lamas keep talking about how much harm Dorje Shugden can do, but they don't have any power or rituals to bind him, it makes him pretty impotent looking, doesn't it? And then they put on, and then their students put on Facebook, oh, that person does Dorje Shugden, don't go near them. That person does Dorje Shugden, they're bad. That person does Dorje Shugden, they're not good. That's very bad. That segregates people. That segregates people. That's very, very bad. Tibetan Lamas should not advise people against any spiritual practice. Tibetan Lamas should let people practice whatever religion they want. And if they choose a religion that the Tibetan Lamas do not like, the Tibetan Lamas should not comment and say their religion is bad, their religion is bad, their religion is bad. Can you imagine a world leader, a prime minister or president saying, everybody can come to my political talks except Lutherans. Everybody can come to my political talk except Baptists. Everybody can come to my political talk except Catholics, because Catholics are evil. Everyone can come to my political talks and gatherings and parties and whatever and be my friend except Jews. Imagine if a world leader of a democratic free nation was to stand up and say something like that and segregate one religion. In America, you practice any religion you want, but the government and the leaders and the presidents and the governors and the mayors and the civic leaders all cannot show any bias or prejudice or hatred or make any laws against you because of religion. America was created for that reason. America was created for religious freedom because the Quakers, the Shakers, could not practice their religion in England. So they got on the boat, went over to America, did away with the American Indians, and they started practicing their own religion. How did they do away with the Indians? They pushed them more west. They started taking over the east. America was created specifically for religious freedom. So how can an American person in America say, you can't come to my center if you practice Dorje Shugden. You can't come to the Dalai Lama's talk if you practice Dorje Shugden. This is against democratic principles. America stands for that. I'm from America. I'm American. So that is against democratic principles to restrict someone from doing something simply because of their religion. Then if you want to say Dorje Shugden people will harm the Dalai Lama, look, there are good and bad people in every religion. There are good and bad people in every race, economic background, gender, and religion in the world. There are good and bad Dorje Shugden people. There are good and bad Christians, good and bad Jews, good and bad Muslims. There are good and bad Hindus. It's just the way of the world. There are good and bad Americans. There are good and bad Indians. There are good and bad Chinese. There are good and bad Japanese. You can't say just because they practice Dorje Shugden, everybody's bad. How can that be? How can Dorje Shugden people be bad suddenly when it's been around for 400 years? Okay, that doesn't make sense. So, number one in conclusion. It's impossible the Dalai Lama can be harmed by Dorje Shugden. It is impossible that any high lamas can be harmed by Dorje Shugden. It is impossible any sincere Buddhists can be harmed by Dorje Shugden because they have refuge. It is impossible any monk and nun can be harmed by Dorje Shugden. It is impossible anyone who trusts their particular Dharma protector can be harmed by Dorje Shugden. So if that's the case, who can Dorje Shugden harm? And second, high lamas should get together, do a ritual, and send Dorje Shugden into the light. Then we don't have to worry about it. Third, instead of segregating, spitting on, and saying very vulgar things to Dorje Shugden people, they should actually show compassion and love. We should show compassion and love and tolerance and understanding to someone who thinks different than us, who practices a different religion, who is a different color, who is a different gender, who is a different person who is into an alternative sexual orientation. However different the other person is, instead of always looking at the differences, why don't we look at the similarities? We're all humans. So if we do that, it'll be a much happier and nicer world. But in conclusion, this was not said to show any disrespect to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I very much love the Dalai Lama, and I respect the Dalai Lama, and I wish the Dalai Lama long life. I wish the Dalai Lama long life, longer life, and much more success in bringing Dharma to many beings. Having said that, I will still be very loyal to my root Lama, Kyabje Saranchi, who gave me practice Dorje Shugden. And there are hundreds of thousands of us in Tibet and outside of Tibet and India who continue to practice Dorje Shugden, not because we want to counter the Tibetan leadership, not because we want to counter them, but because we have made a commitment to our Lama. It's as simple as that. And last but not least, I will continue sharing my religion, Buddhism, and within that, the protected Dorje Shugden, to people who are karmically connected. And all laws in democratic countries, especially in the CTA, in the Tibetan administration, should not bias against someone due to religion. That's how I feel. Thank you very much. Thank you.